Good day, fellow flippers. My name is Brad of ChiSoxCardboard, and today I'm going to be covering my 2024 annual report on flipping cardboard. I told my wife at the beginning of the year that I would report back to her how the project was going. I guess maybe reassure her that I wasn't just losing money hand over fist, and so part of this endeavor today was to provide that report to her. But since I did, I figured I would report it here on YouTube as well. One of the things that just if you haven't seen any of my content so far, which is only a handful of videos, and I'm proud and grateful to report that I now have literally dozens of subscribers, and I do mean literally about 25. So 1 dozen plus 2 dozen, and then an extra one, I guess. So really appreciate those few that have subscribed. I hope you're enjoying the content. I hope it continues to grow a little bit. But I collect cards. I purchased some cards to hold long term. Those are primarily White Sox cards and Hall of Fame cards. I'm working on the 1965 Topps set, which obviously I won't flip before I finish the set. Otherwise, it wouldn't be much of a collection of the set. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it when I finish the set. I'm not sure whether I'm going to hold it long term or turn it around and sell it as a set, or turn it around and sell it more slowly, piece by piece. Haven't decided that yet. I got to finish the set first. But the third sort of aspect of my collecting, quote unquote, is to flip vintage baseball cards for a profit. And I reinvest that money into either long-term items to hold and collect, or just reinvest it into the flipping. So theoretically, the money should continue to grow, some of which can be earmarked for my personal collection, and some of which can be earmarked to help it continue to grow. One of the things that I really enjoy about the collecting is it's just tracking the dollars and cents of it all. And so I'm going to show you all the spreadsheet that I use for that. It's right here. The portions that I have blacked out are just the users that have bought and sold from me. I didn't want to put their names out there. But this is every single card and other transaction that I have purchased or sold over the past year or so, going back to just the very end of 2023 is kind of when I got back into this. And so you can see it covers, we're getting close there to close to 850 or close to 1,000 transactions of some kind or another. Some of it still needs to be filled in, but the dollars and cents are all there. There is one portion of it that still frustrates me. At some point in February, I lost track of $4.04. So I had to do this accounting adjustment and subtract, I think, $4.04 from my Hall of Fame budget because I just could not figure out where that $4.04 went. So that's a little bit of a sore spot. But other than that, every single penny from the past year has been tracked accurately, and I go back and double check that pretty regularly to make sure it's still accurate after that colossal failure over $4.04. And so I have very good records to show you what I'm about to show you. Now, being having a history in military bureaucracy, I thought, what better way to provide this report than by PowerPoint. So I have prepared a PowerPoint for you all, and here it is. ChiSoxCardboard's flipping annual report. Wait, that doesn't sound quite right. ChiSoxCardboard's annual flipping report. No, that doesn't sound quite right. ChiSoxCardboard's annual report, where he reports how much money he spent and made flipping vintage baseball cards. Okay, that doesn't sound so offensive. Got it. All right, here we go. So In 2024, I bought 278 cards and sold those cards. So this is cards that I both purchased and sold in 2024. On those cards, I spent $4,086.70. I netted $4,816.12 for a profit of $729.42. That's a 17.8% actual return on cards purchased and sold in 2024. Some of them were pretty decent cards, like the Ernie Banks that you see here. Some of them were low. In fact, probably about half of these cards were kind of low value, raw vintage cards that were only selling for $1 or $2, sometimes up to 5 or 10. But it was kind of split between low value vintage, raw vintage, and higher value graded vintage. Now, of course, that doesn't tell the full story. There's also a current inventory. I have 103 cards that I bought in 2024 for the purpose of reselling, but which had not sold as of December 31st, 2024. On those 103 cards, I spent $1,970.32 with an estimated retail of $2,644.40. I want to pause there to talk a little bit about the estimated retail, because that's an art, not a science. And so for graded cards, it's a little bit easier. I get on vintagecardprices.com, not a sponsor, could be. And I just look at past sales, and if they've got at least a few past sales in the past year, a few sales in the past year in the grade that we're talking about, I just take the VCP average on that card and I plug that in as the estimated retail value. It gets a little bit more complicated when you're talking about cards that either don't sell very often or don't sell in the grade that I have very often, especially in the 0.5s, or raw vintage is just really difficult to comp with any sort of precision. So that's where it becomes more of an art than a science. SGC is also a little bit more difficult to comp because they don't usually have as many examples of a particular card. And so some of the rules of thumb that I use for some of those issues, like 0.5s, I usually value those at 1/3 of the way between the lower grade and the higher grade. So if let's just take some easy math. If a PSA 6 sells for $70 and a PSA 7 sells for $100 on average, and there's a pretty good volume of sales in those grades, I would value a 6.5 at about $80, 1/3 of the way between those two price points. For SGC, if it's post-war, I usually value it at around 75 or 80% of PSA's value in the same grade. If it's pre-war, sometimes SGC actually goes for more. Historically in the hobby, SGC has been kind of the most highly regarded for pre-war vintage baseball, whereas PSA has taken on that mantle for the post-war stuff. And then for raw vintage, it's that much more difficult, particularly low value raw vintage. You can hold it for a long time and get a pretty good price from somebody who really needs it, or you can move it quickly, but usually at a much lower price point. So those become a little bit more difficult to value, but at the same time, they're usually less risky because we're only talking about an investment of a few dollars per card, or even less, and so they don't move the needle as much. All right, back to the PowerPoint, which I'm sure you guys are loving. All right, so with an estimated retail of $2,644.40, I'm estimating my net at $2,247.74, and that's just simply 85% of the estimated retail. I figure I'm going to lose about 15% of that retail through fees and other expenses. That's primarily going to be eBay fees, which come out at 13%, and I'm also sort of building in some inaccuracy in my estimated retail, because some of these cards that I have in my inventory right now, I probably am having difficulty selling because I'm trying to sell them at a higher price point than is warranted, or then the market will bear. The Willie Mays here, the 1970 Willie Mays here is one of those examples. I've been trying to sell it for a little bit, but I think it was not the best purchase. I actually have this covered in a previous video. I don't think this was the best purchase, and so I'm having trouble flipping it at a profit. So when it comes to eBay fees and inaccuracies on my estimated retail, I'm shaving off 15% of that and hoping for a net of 85%, which would be an estimated profit of $277.42, or an estimated return on current inventory of 14.1%. If I put those together, I get to 381 cards bought in 2024, where for the purposes of flipping, I spent $6,057.02 on them. My actual and estimated profit is just over $1,000 at $1,006.84 for an estimated return of 16.6%. So that's pretty good. It's a pretty good return. I mean, I'm not going to live off that for sure, but I'm happy with that, with those results in 2024. And it was really the first time. I've bought and sold cards before, but this was really the first time that I've dedicated a lot of time, energy, and thought to doing it. And so I'm happy to see that it is yielding results that are not a loss, and a little bit of a profit. So I'm excited about that. I feel good about it. But I have a little bit more. So what does this look like in terms of an annual return? I went and I tallied up how much I had put into, how much new money I had put into flipping cards this year, and that total added up to $3,701.65. And so I'm getting at that number by including both just new dollars, like I go out and I've got a full-time job, and some of the salary that I earn from that full-time job I put into baseball cards, vintage baseball cards, to include money that is earmarked for flipping cards. And so that was about $2,400. I also included in this figure some money that I received, some net profit, or some actually gross profit I received from selling cards that I had before I started. So selling cards that I had from actually pre-pandemic periods. And so I just included all of the gross proceeds of those sales into this dollar figure. And then there's a little bit more that I added in from sources here and there, gifts, selling a few miscellaneous items on eBay that were unrelated to baseball cards. And that's where I arrived at $3,701.65. And so if we take the new money, and didn't do a great job with this slide. Sorry, my presentation skills are a little bit rusty. I've left the military bureaucracy. But what I'm trying to communicate here is that I have an actual profit, not an estimated profit, but an actual profit of $729.42 on $3,701.65, which translates to an annual return of 19.7%, which, as anybody in the investment world would know, is a pretty good annual return. It's also an annual return in this case that I think is sustainable and repeatable, because it primarily is driven by expertise on my part and just hard work on my part. Looking for the right purchases, and then connecting those purchases with the right collectors who are willing to pay retail. And so I again feel pretty good about that annual return. But it raises the question in my mind. Well, actually, let me talk about a couple lessons learned first. The first lesson learned is that I'm doing this. We're talking about over 300 cards, right? I'm doing this with too many low value raw cards, kind of like the one you're looking at here. Who is that? You might ask. I have no idea. I can't remember. I put this slideshow together last night, and I knew the name last night, but as I sit here right now, I cannot even recall who is depicted on that card. You can see it's in terrible condition. That's a 1950 Bowman. I had picked up like 93 1950 Bowmans at one point, and I've since sold them all at a profit, but it took a lot of work. So 93 of those 300 and whatever cards were these low value, low quality 1950 Bowmans, and it took a lot of work to move those at a very small profit. And so one of my lessons learned is that I've got to, even though I like to have more cards and I like to move through more inventory, I've got to scale back the low value, low quality raw vintage because it's too time consuming and not doesn't yield the profits that I'm hoping to get better about. And the second lesson learned is just too many fees. I paid $850 in fees roughly in 2024, and that was almost entirely on eBay. So $850 is more than the actual profit that I made. The profit was in the 700s and the fees were in the 800s. And so that is a huge, I won't say lost opportunity, because eBay opens up a lot of opportunities as well. But if I can start to shift from a high volume on eBay to a lower volume on eBay and a higher volume elsewhere, I can definitely improve the profit margin. I believe one of the ways I plan to do that in 2025 is to get on myslabs.com. I have not put in my seller's application yet to them. Not a sponsor, could be, but I plan to get my application into them within the next week or so. The other way to reduce fees is simply to make connections and get to know people in the hobby and be able to work with them directly rather than anonymously through eBay. So I will continue through that, and actually this channel is one of the ways that I'm hoping to do that. All right, so those are my lessons learned, and then questions raised. One of my questions raised is just how much can this be scaled? So at a nearly 20% annual return on investment, that's a great percentage, but if you're talking about just a few $1,000s, I mean, it's good. I'm thrilled to be reinvesting that money in my personal collection as well as in flipping cardboard, but it's certainly, it's not life-changing money or anything like that. Not that I'm doing this for life-changing money, but I'm enjoying it. So how much can this be scaled? And one of the things that has stood out to me is that I spent each flipping dollar 1.37 times. So the way I arrive at that number is $4,431.07 in new dollars. And so that's the money that I put in plus the profit that was made on actual sales. Those new dollars led to $6,057.02 in spending. That's each dollar is being turned over 1.37 times. I think in order to scale this, you've got to turn over those dollars more than that. So one of my goals for 2025 is to turn over each dollar at least 2 times. That seems like a reasonable but a significant reasonable goal, but would lead to a significant increase in profitability. And then if it can be scaled, how much would I want to scale it significantly? For one thing, I would probably have to quit my job to really scale it significantly, and that's not going to happen anytime in the near future. Because I like my job, and I'm not sure that I want to make flipping cardboard my full-time job, even if I could, which I have serious reservations about. But I do want to continue doing this, and here's why. I want to make sure that every episode we're showing at least some cardboard. So here is a card that I just sold yesterday. It is a 1987 Classic Update Barry Bonds SGC 9. And this is a card that I would know absolutely nothing about if I wasn't flipping cardboard, because I'm not out there looking for this card. I don't collect Barry Bonds. I don't especially like Barry Bonds, although his association with steroids really turns some people off. It doesn't turn me off as much because he was a really good player before he ever touched steroids. But this is a beautiful card. I love the yellow borders on the yellow uniform. And I didn't know anything about this set, which isn't even really a set, I came to learn. It's actually a game. The Classic was a game. It was like a trivia game. And Classic Update was 50 cards that they added to the game mid-year or after the initial release of the game. So if you turn this over, you can see the questions that were posed as part of the game. So one question is, Hoyt Wilhelm, true or false? Hoyt Wilhelm had only one eye. It says that's true. I did not know that. Who was known as the voice of the Yankees? Mel Allen. Also did not know that. Who was the first relief pitcher to win the Cy Young Award? Young spelled incorrectly. Mike Marshall. Who holds the major league record for being caught stealing in a season? Ricky Henderson. That one I did know. And what do managers give the umpire before the start of the lineup? Start of the game, the lineup. So just a really interesting card that I never would have owned if not for flipping cardboard. This one was bought yesterday, so I've got to package it up and sell it or get it in the mail today to the new owner. I think I may have actually undersold this card a little bit in. I can't remember the exact dollar figures, but it goes for quite a bit in PSA 9, and there wasn't a ton of sales in SGC 9, so I set it pretty low on eBay, and it was snatched up fairly quickly. But that's okay. I still made something like a 50% profit on it and got it into the hands of a different collector, and I got to enjoy it briefly. And so I feel pretty good about that. That was my first sale of 2025, so we're doing good. The other one that was purchased yesterday is this 1966 Topps Sandy Koufax PSA 6. Pretty, I would say pretty sharp card, but it's probably, not one that I would have owned for my personal collection, just because the centering isn't great, and I am not as big of a centering junkie as some out there, but for a personal collection, on a card like this, I probably could not get on board with that off centering left to right. So I don't think I would have owned this card myself, but I'm happy to have owned it briefly and to have turned it over and flipped it for about, I think, like a 17% profit or something along those lines on this one. This was Sandy Koufax's last playing days card. He famously retired after the 1966 season, still at the height of his career, citing just arm pain, and I think most would agree that he didn't exactly warm to the spotlight. And he was quite in the spotlight in the 1960s because he was doing some pretty incredible things. So happy to have owned this for a short period, and look forward to getting it packaged up and sent to its new owner today. All right. So that's all I have. If you have any thoughts or input, or if my accounting practices are not very good, because I'm certainly no accountant, I'd be interested in any feedback you have. If you have any questions about how I'm doing this flipping, or how I'm tracking it, I'd be happy to share what I've, some of the lessons I've learned more in a one-on-one setting, or even share like the files that I use to track this stuff, maybe scrubbed of certain information. So reach out and let me know if you have any interest in talking about that further. And finally, my last two episodes have featured the Illini, who just went to Eugene, Oregon, and put a beatdown on the Ducks in men's basketball. Over a 30-point win. They scored over 100 on the road against number 9 Oregon. So they've now won the Citrus Bowl and won on the road in Oregon. It is a good time to be an Illini fan. If you're not following the Illini, you should be. I'm actually going to be looking into possibly purchasing a few Illini cards or some sort of Illini memorabilia because I never have before, and I think that would be kind of fun. All right, well, that's all I've got today. Thanks for watching. Appreciate your time and any input or feedback that you all have. With that, collect what you love, flip what you like.